These are the answers to Unit 1 multiple choice quiz A. Obviously, question 12 was a big problem because 21 people got it wrong. After that, we'll look at questions 1, 16, 17, and 18. As usual, there's going to be two screens, one that has the question. I would pause the video, look at the question, try and do it again, and then watch the rest of the video to get the answer. So in the first one, we've got a table of values. It goes from roughly inputs of 1.9 up to 2.1, and it asks us mostly about the limit around as x equals 2. The big missing piece of information is whether or not this function is continuous, and because it doesn't mention that the function is continuous, we really have very little to work with. If it were continuous, then we know that the limit value would equal the function value, but since it's not, we don't know whether or not the limit value equals the function value. So right away, that eliminates A. Since it's not continuous, for option B, as x approaches 2, there could be a turning point somewhere between this 1.99999 and 2, so we're not sure what the behavior is near there. And same thing coming from the other direction. There could be a turning point between those two input values there. So B is out. C, we don't know whether the limit exists or it doesn't, and so the best option is D. Cannot be definitively determined from the data in the table. Had they told us that this was a continuous function, a lot of that information would change. Next one. We have a fourth degree polynomial, and they were interested in how many inputs produce an output of 6. Two things to notice here. First of all, they're looking for positive inputs, so B has to be positive. And second, all polynomials are continuous. So that means that the function value has to be the same as the limit value. So the way I did this was, since I noticed that it was a calculator question, I put the polynomial into my calculator, and I also graphed y equals 6 to get this plot here. On this plot, it looks like there's at least 3 places where the polynomial crosses 6. This one is out because it's a negative input. We don't want negative b's. This one I'm not quite sure how many times it crosses y equals 6, and this one is pretty clearly 1. I know I'm looking at all the important part of the polynomial because the fourth degree polynomial with a positive leading coefficient is going to point upwards at the end behavior, and I know that fourth degree polynomials have at most 3 turning points. So there's a turning point down here, turning point obviously there, and a turning point down there. So I don't need to zoom out to see any more of the function. I really need to zoom in here to see how many times this plot intersects y equals 6. If I change my window to go from 0 to 2 and my y values are real close to 6, 5.9 to 6.1, I get this picture here, and it's pretty clear that the function crosses y equals 6 twice. So now there's a total of 1, 2, 3 places where I have positive b values that produce an output of 6. So the correct answer is 3 right here, choice C. The third one, we have a function, and it asks us to take the limit. But what I need you to notice is it's not asking you to evaluate, it's rearranging the question. So since we need the question in a different format, this quantity down here, if you multiply it by its conjugate, root x plus 2, both in the top and the bottom, that produces an x minus 4 on the bottom, which cancels with x minus 4 on the top, and then our new statement matches option B right there. Anytime you see an opportunity to use conjugates, try and do that. Fourth one, ask for a limit of this fraction. Pretty straightforward. Both the top and the bottom, you can factor out an x. They cancel out. As you input 0 for x, those disappear and you're left with 18 in the top. This disappears, you're left with 6 in the bottom. 18 divided by 6 is 3, choice C. And the last one, another limit question. Again, this is a situation where they're not asking you to evaluate the limit, they're just rearranging the question. Since all of my choices do not have a sign squared in the bottom anywhere, that's a bit of a tip-off that I want to work with this sign squared. We know that sine squared is the same thing as 1 minus cosine squared. If I factor that, and then change the denominator into the factored form. The numerator and the denominator have a canceling, but because they're in a different direction with subtraction, a -1 is left behind. So cosine x minus 1 and 1 minus cosine x cancels. -1 left behind. I'm left with this statement, which matches A. So that's it.